welcome.
Ooh. What's that?
What's that? That sounds like a microphone upgrade for Always Strikes Last, and this time it's Always Strikes Late, which is when we can only find a time zone overlap, which is late at night for me, or at weird times for everybody else.
Always Strikes Late, coming at you with the sensual side of the mortal realms.
Yeah.
Sweet, smooth Mike.
Let's put on that Sigmar jazz. Little Caleb Bryan Hop, maybe some Idneth deep tunes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Welcome to Always Strikes Last. This is the Age of Sigmar podcast where we talk about Age of Sigmar.
Yeah. And sometimes other stuff, but generally the former thing.
Yeah, I'm Miles, and I'm joined by Matt and Jack. So we get through the opening reel. Okay.
Can y'all hear that? It's been a rough go at it. We're up early. We're up late. We're all just up at random times.
Time zones are weird, man.
That's
the worst. Yeah, good. So with all that excitement about Worlds and all that stuff from the last couple of weeks, we forgot that Jack went to a cool tournament, and so we're going to talk about that. Yeah,
this particular episode is going to be a fun combo of some of my adventures at the Iron Weld, and of course, exciting new topics like the GHB coming out this upcoming weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I guess without further ado, I'll launch into the stuff I encountered at Ironweld. Well, that was an adventure. Awesome tournament, massive fun time, in Wakefield, organized by the Wicked Dicey folks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just awesome. It was sort of like a top tier, like who's who of like potent Warhammer AOS players, kind of coming in from all over. So it was a very stacked house, about 60 players in the tournament.
Nice.
And yeah. So very, very chill, kind of the usual thing. Stay at the convention center if you can, hang out with everybody, catch up, occasionally kick teeth in, occasionally get your teeth kicked in. And, let me tell you guys all about it. So I'd say that, not to bury the lead, but I was the epitome of balance. I maintained the balance in this one, coming in at a 2.5 out of 5. so right in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah.
As all things should be.
Yeah, I maintained it. So that's what I'll take away from that one. But yeah, I forayed in for us. I was bringing the Slaves to Darkness and doing my kind of Slaanesh mainly themed kind of variant on that, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. I've sort of talked about this list before on the podcast, but it's about charging really far, really hard with Slaanesh chosen. And then kind of having some fun support pieces in the form of like lords and sorcerers and, like unmade and maybe some chaos warriors like set an objective, doing the usual kind of good stuff. But, the plan worked partially. I'll say that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it only needs to work partially to work.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about the tournament was I did have 5 fantastic games, 5 great opponents. Really enjoyed like every single one of them. Those who I knew, it was good to catch up. Those who I hadn't met yet, kind of the meet 5 new friends. Ethos really in full force.
Oh, nice.
And let me walk you guys through the quick version, and sort of relive with all our audience the highs and lows. So first out of the gates, I ended up playing a really great guy named Mike Maccabee, who had Soulblight Gravelords. And this guy's a Tough Crowd team member, and I didn't really
Who
know.
isn't these days? Jeez, no.
It's the who's who of good Warhammer players, or Wicked Dicey, or the other good clubs. But not that all clubs aren't good, but you know what I mean. The ones that seem to sort of
absolutely
show up at various places and duke it out. And as we know, like Wicked Dicey and Tough Crowd are kind of perennial rivals on Twitter, so it's very promising.
Nice.
Yeah, but I hadn't had a chance to play Mike before, and kind of showed up, and the first thing I see is tons of zombies. And I'd been basically worried about it, with this chosen, this thing to myself, oh man, the worst thing would be to run into things and just reflect mortal wounds back at them, because that would be silly. So it looked like it might be a tricky situation, but started off, had kind of an interesting first couple of turns. I did manage to do the chosen thing and bring them in with a levitated flying charge into a very inconvenient place, and managed to quickly pick up Belladama, a whole bunch of direwolves, a vampire lord, and Torquilius the Chamberlain, because they kind of had gotten to a place where they were not supposed to be.
Okay.
But, that did not end up being quite enough, even with Bellicor doing this thing and stopping some grave guard from being super interfering, like in the following double turn and turn. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, he was just doing this masterful play, like with the Verkos direwolf summons. I know you guys have seen this trick, but it's sort of like bringing them in with heroic action, because you sort of add models to a unit.
Sure.
Actually, not heroic action. I think it's actually like a command ability. Mm-hmm. And using that to make sure that they're much closer than they should be to things, either dragging stuff into combat or ensure they can solve into combat and sort of tie stuff up. And so the direwolves ended up becoming like this really flexible tar pit, which that particular Slaves to Darkness army just cannot deal with as well, because it has limited like combat pieces.
Now, typically when you add stuff back to a unit, like I'm thinking about the verbiage from like pink horrors and blue horrors, they have like a whole extra paragraph about how you can only put it within 3 inches of a model if you're already engaged with that model or whatever. And is the Verkos wolves, do they not have that, or is it just an omission, or is it on purpose, or what do we think?
I think it's an on purpose, and it's some sort of like cool variant of the build. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick.
Now I know there is stuff like again with Tzeentch, like where you do that spell and then all of a sudden somebody's a spawn.
Yeah, spawns in combat and getting things attached definitely happens. There, I can't remember. It's kind of sad, that book's been out for long enough, and I've been lending Mason my vampire army, so I haven't had any actual practice with them. But it used to be that you could do the same thing with Belladama and the wolves and just tie people up in combat. I don't know if it works the same way now, to be honest, but if it does, it makes that army even crazier. Just them coming back within 3 inches of you is just nuts. Insanely cool, but a lot of people are having problems with it lately, it seems.
Yeah. That feels a bit like my first time fighting Khorne recently. It was prep game. But Ken, who was our Khorne player at Worlds, his philosophy was, how many little bullshit units can I physically put into this list? Mm-hmm. Right. So like he had all these underworld war bands and Warcry and Warcry units. Like there's an underworld war band where they summon a free dog that's like a separate unit of a single dog. He was like, yes, please do that. So then, every hero, every one of my hero phases, 3 random bullshit units would just move D6 inches into combat with me, and then I could never move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is sort of a little bit varianty like that. I just looked at the text of that particular ability, and it's just, look, if you're Verkos,
do
leader, are you within 12 of a summonable unit at D3 models? So the direwolves, because they have that 6-inch pile in, just get them all sorts of weird positions.
That's
very
cool.
Trick. Gotcha.
Yeah. So like he was just great to play. It was like he got my crazy chosen alpha, and then he's like, okay, now let's deal with this with the hundreds of little mini units in exactly that kind of way. Because he had like I think I mentioned over zombies, but it was 5 units of 20 zombies. Then he had the 20 graveyard, and then he had the corpse guard, and that's on top of the 10 direwolves and the other 10 you get just for being Verkos, essentially bring them as a free summon. So it was
a lot.
It's interesting to see that walking list come back in a big way. The last book it felt a little bit more balanced, I think, with the units that I would see. But
in
now
terms
it's
of,
just
archetypally balanced.
Yeah, you have your hammer unit, you have your soaking unit, you have, a couple of other different units. But now people can just lean all the way into zombies and wolves. And it's just like, okay, that does it on its own. Almost feels like a fantasy army in a way.
It's just great. Like, gotta love it, even if it's sort of popping itself up inconveniently near you or your back lines or making charges against stuff and or blocking you off. So very hard to do objective play against that particular list when there's so many little blobs dying, coming back, being summoned into. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say that there was a real close game, and it was kind of down to the knife's edge. But at the end of the day, it went his way because we had a couple fun turns, where things could have swung one way or another, and it ended up going kind of, of course, not in the chaos direction. But one moment that I keep recalling is he had engineered one of those great charges right at the end where you got in, grabbed a card to do like that whole aura of +1 attack and all these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd gotten in the Graveguard too. They'd made like a pretty long charge and made it into a replenished fusion of Chosen, who finally managed to kill everything and rally back a few members. They were like 6 or 7 or something like that at that point. And, maybe even 8. And he gets all that stuff in, but it's right when you need the cockatrice. And the cockatrice is sitting there staring at the Graveguard. And of course, that is not the moment the cockatrice overcome with stage fright and got the 4 up. And so as a result, they were hitting quite hard and with many more attacks than might have had that cut off. And it probably allowed them more easily than not obliterate that particular unit, which I think was fairly pivotal in that moment, to be able to maintain some control over that center. And of course, the rest was history. But it was a great time for that one. So that was the first one. I forayed into the tournament with a strong close game and made a loss, and then the rest was
still though. That's not. I mean, for a first, because the pairings on those first rounds are always random, right? Like, so to have a fun close game, whether it's a win or a loss, is excellent.
I thought so too. I mean,
yeah,
no complaints about it all. It was a great old time, but. You got one under the belt and said, okay, well, we'll see what we do with this. But, the 5-0 dream immediately shattered. But, very much a good learning, too, just in some of the weaknesses that list that I brought, where a lot of good things there, a lot of good support pieces, a lot of good set and objective pieces, but really only one I'm definitely going to have a hammer threat, which is those Chosen. And, of course, that was sort of a thing in the back of my mind that, I was watching play out or not play out, but then trying to take as maybe a note for the next iteration of this list and move the new GHP. But I digress. So we had that one first game. We go to the second one at day one. And this was against a guy I know from Wicked Dicey named Chris Wildman. Great guy. Always go back to the forums and discords and has some fun ideas. And he jumped in to this particular tournament with Nighthawk.
Ooh.
And yeah. So this game, was when, kind of interestingly, he had I think it was a Crimson Host, if I can recall off the top of my head.
Who can even tell all those sheet ghosts apart? Honestly, I can't.
Yes, they're all scary and they fly around and they all want the same thing, which is exactly. The Eternal Torment.
It's 4+ mortal wounds on the charge, and it makes the Bladegeist battle line.
There we go. Matt coming at you with the hard inside scoop on all of the
Matt's definitely the font of hard knowledge, and I'm just some half remembered ravings here. But
yeah, hey, it's a give and a take. It's a give and a take. I couldn't tell you about the Virkas, so I can't notch every. I can't check every box.
Yeah. Well, let me paint a slightly better word picture. To improve upon the 5-year-old finger painting that I started with. It was Scarlet Doom. And, he had a kind of a castle-y build. If you go near this castle, it's going to be hard to do anything because everything's going to hit you back with the truck. There's going to be minuses to wound, all those kind of buff pieces. I think it was a Spirit of Torment or 2. There was a Guardian of Souls. He had a couple units of 10 Chain Rasps, but then he had 3 units of 20-strong Bladegeist Revenants and a Black Coach. So,
and the Black Coach, though, really?
Yeah, with the spicy Black Coach. So...
They're interesting.
There's there's a bit of contention over on this side of the pond about the black coach. We had a very silly tournament recently where it ended up 3 black coaches versus 3 Stormcast chariots, and everyone was like, "Who's bringing all those black coaches? That's ridiculous!" And they won. They ended up anyway. It's very silly. Black coaches are a bit of a hot topic right now.
Would be a digression, but I did once play at one. I think it was Summer Slaughter one year, a 4 black coach list, which was truly bananas. Yeah,
yeah, that's insane.
but yeah, no, it was not quite the case here. Chris didn't go quite that mad, but he did sort of set up like an inviting castle to make me go first, and it was like, okay, I think the black coach and maybe some chain rasps or something. It's sort of like a little screen ahead of like all the blade geist revenants and all these things, like in a big blob in the middle. Mm-hmm. It was almost tempting me to do the chosen thing and try to run in and kill everything. And I said, invitation accepted, because I thought that I could kill the front screen, do the pile in, and then clear one entire unit of blade geist revenants, which would be enough to sort of diminish all the flying around ghosty things I thought sufficiently based upon the objective play in that mission.
Sure.
And so it sort of worked. I killed the black coach in screens, and then you know how when you almost kill a night high unit, it's like the most supremely unsatisfying thing, and just they're all going to come back immediately. Yeah. So that did happen. The chosen died in fairly short order in the subsequent turns, and he was kind of flying things around and trying to get the objectives or kill the other stuff. And it was a very tooth and nail battle at that point, but ended up being that way the whole game until we kind of ended up at the, culmination of all of this with a Chaos Lord and Chaos Warriors having actually held one flank pretty well. And Be'lakor having done some work in a tie. So it was at this point 1-1, or what was it? 1-1 is like a tie loss. Is it win?
Yeah. So you're 0-1-1.
0-1-1. Yeah. So not the most auspicious start, but it was it was something. I'll say that.
That's all right. It's the Chaos Submarine. Here we go.
Exactly. All these things were just culminating in this opportunity. So at this point, I get to my third game, and I ran into a buddy of mine who I'd actually sort of met and played earlier in the year. We were doing some stuff at a different, grand tournament. A guy named Dan Berger, really nice dude. I think he's actually based out of Connecticut, and he was bringing Ideneth Deepkin.
Oh,
and we just bold strategies in this tournament.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was just following themes. I feel like my journey started with undead, different flavor of undead, and then fishmen. And so it was I went from the cold of the grave to the cold of the grave to the cold of the abyssal depths. I mean, at least it was trending in some kind of direction. So, then I sat down, and his list was just scary from the get-go. And, it ended up being an incredibly fun game, as really all of these were. But just to paint this picture, he's doing the Domhain thing, and he has a couple Thrall Masters, a Tidecaster, Lotan, and then just a ton of Thralls and Reavers. I think it was 3 units of 10 Thralls and then 4 units of 10 Reavers, plus the old big turtle.
Did he have the Achillean King as well?
He did not have an Achillean King. It was all little foot heroes, and then all of these Thralls. So many.
I suspect that's actually the right choice. I think that. Anyway, I could go off on them. That's okay, Dave.
That's fair.
No call outs here.
Yeah,
not at all.
The Achillean Slap King, where he's getting all the extra attacks, and he's 2s and 2s of the extra damage, and he's high tiding in a different turn and that kind of stuff. I feel like it's so easy to just take that guy and throw him into a huge hornet's nest, and he might kill a bunch of stuff, but he almost never survives that.
Yep. Yeah. That guy sounds like a scary blender. even still.
Oh, absolutely. No, he's terrifying. And you can't screen him because he flies and he has a million move. But
oh yeah.
I think this list sounds much more sort of meat and potatoes, well balanced. So I'm excited to hear about it.
It was really interesting on the field, and we started off, and this particular mission was the one where you get bonus points for having the Galatian champions on the flag objectives, which disappeared.
Okay,
which is a good OAS player. I'm forgetting his name. This particular one.
Position over power.
Yeah, yes, that's right. I'm gonna blame it being almost 2, but it was it was a pretty interesting thing because I had some little foot heroes, right? Like I like that, in my list, an exalted champion who's meant to go grab objectives like that and sit on those things. So I was feeling pretty good about that, but ended up with top of 1 again. And my mission was kill as many of these thralls as possible before they can either shoot me to death in a storm of arrows or get to turn 3 and become, the always strikes first blenders that they can be. Mm-hmm. And I mean, some combination of the buffs that they get from being near, I think, the Thrall Masters, they're garrisoning that Gloom type shipwreck because it gives them a pretty big footprint, and the other stuff that they, is just coming off the heroes in the list means they just hit really, really hard. I think it's like 2s and 2s, tons of attacks kind of stuff on the Thralls, and I think it was something equally problematically scary off of the Reavers in terms of their shooting output, and so. I came in pretty quickly, and I did delete a whole unit of the Reavers, another unit of the Thralls, maybe 2 units of Thralls. I think it was at the end of the day. But the one that survived was able to come in, and the next turn they charged the Chaos Warriors, and 1 unit of Thralls off of the buffs that they were getting from the heroes actually killed all 10 chosen. It was just like chopped them down.
Oh wow!
Insane output. But, they managed to do their job in between that stuff, me controlling the flag objectives, with the other elements of the army, Be'lakor shutting down. I think the turtle for a key turn and a half meant that I was able to, at the very end of the game, kind of get the points I needed to take the victory. But it was real fun, and I got to see just how scary those things can get. Because as we got farther on, even 2 or 3 of any of these things left can do tons of damage. And those heroes aren't slashes in combat either. So at one point, Be'lakor was fighting both Thrall Masters and I think the Tidecaster as well, maybe it was. And
nice.
No, they ended up eventually killing them because they're pretty tough and they can do that damage. I'm not really doing them justice in terms of the exact sequence of buffs. I think that's something I'd have to
No, how it all comes together is a secret, that is lost to the deep.
It lies beneath the waves. Dan will be able to tell us.
But that army is always so intimidating too, especially when they have the heavy thrall list because, they're all there. They're on their 32 mil bases, and you forget that they're all 1 moon models. You know what I mean? Because most things at this point on a 32 mil base is a 2 wound model. So you're just looking across at this thing, and you're like, how am I ever going to chew through that?
Yeah, it just looks like an amazing amount of wounds, even though it's a little more fragile.
Yeah,
even with the projected extra toughness from the turtle, then you might think that thing, of course, is just like an inviolate tank. It feels like you never get through it. Never,
unless you can magically summon up 12 mortal wounds on a single target. Have fun with this turtle.
Oh, 100%. I guess maybe for the reference, just for anyone looking at this list and scratching their heads, I think it's that the Reavers have 2 shots at 18 inches, which were normally base 3/3 red -1/1. Of course, it gets buffed up from that. I guess they get an extra 1 of their hit rolls if they're within 9 of the model. So short range firepower of 2 up 3 up to start before any buffs, and just to look at the old Thrall Master to make sure that we are doing some justice to this cool list, because it really was intimidating. Is he killing Thrall Master when he's hanging out with stuff at the start of the combat phase for the fighty ones? He can pick a unit within 12 of him, or I should say all in front of the Marty units, only within 12 of them. They reroll hit rolls of 1 with melee weapons. Or unmodified hit rolls of a 6 do the 2 hits instead of the 1.
Yep.
Or you can do a -1 to wound. Sort of like a debuff or something as well. So he's very flexible, and having 2 of them means you get a couple of those active.
Yeah, and it can really add up too. And I think the speed of that list is kind of understated. I think the Reavers go. Did they stay at 8 inches or did they move to 6? They used to be faster.
They're 8 inches, I think, on the Reavers and 6 on the Thralls, but it's still.
You know what I find absolutely insulting about this Thrallmaster is that you're allowed to have 2 of them and pick 2 different fighting stances that you could affect could affect the same unit. And I can't do that with 2 Sloppity Bilepiper songs.
That should be the place where it always happens. I can imagine like a duel in Sloppities being like a rave concert,
There's like a whole extra paragraph about how this doesn't work if there's 2 Sloppity Bilepipers.
Yeah, unless I'm missing something, I think you can do the overlaps here. Maybe that's happen, but
so anyway, these guys are bullshit, and I won't stand for it.
They're dangerous, eyeless sea elves, and oh man. I'll particularly note, I know I was talking earlier about how scary those thralls are in combat. I think it comes down to the fact that, they run in there and each of them has 2 attacks base and 3 of run -1 damage. Mm-hmm. But because of that sweeping blows ability, they're either getting extra attacks. If it's low wound characteristics, it becomes 3 attacks per guy, or they become damage 2 if you're tough stuff like a Chaos Chosen. So that, it can add up. In any case, real fun game. We made it through that end of day 1, and I think we're having like a beer at the table as we closed it out and shook our hands and moved on to the next thing. But it was pretty cool because Dan's household, I did have championship written all over because I think his significant other won the Blood Bowl tournament.
Oh wow!
At the same moment, so, like, she came over the table and she'd like crush it and kind of had like the trophy belts, equivalent. And Dan's like, "You were carrying the torch for us," and we were laughing and having our
nice. Oh my god, she must be an absolute merchant of salt to have made it to become a Blood Bowl champion.
It's true. Notably, I do not think anyone in our league would have had anything but tears.
Oh my god!
To play that. But yeah, so it was a good day 1. We closed it out, and then predictably, everyone else, socialized with everyone. We all had dinner. I went out, came back, stayed up way too late doing things in the conference, and made it to day 2, where first things first, I continued the theme. I played a guy named Jeremy Williams, a really great dude, also Wicked Dice member, kind of in chat forums and active. And first time he and I never actually had a chance to play a game. And most of my experience with Jeremy prior to that has been like looking at pictures of his beautiful, beautiful painted models or beautiful, beautiful diorama work. Mm-hmm. And I got to basically play one of those like armies where you just look at it and say, it looks so good, and I don't understand how it can exist because I can't buy that model. But it looks really good as it is right now. and to sort of paint a word picture for this, he was playing Stormcast Eternals. But his Stormcast Eternals were like Kislevites, sort of like all analog Kislevites. And
interesting.
Yeah. So I guess what I should do is read a couple notes from his list, and I'll tell you what was actually on the table, because this visual spectacle is just fantastic. He had a Krondus, a Lord Castellan. Then for his battle line, it was like 2 Fulminators, 4 Tempesters, and then 2 units of those Judicators with the Full Storm crossbows, as well as 3 Praetors and a Purple Sun. So that was the list. What was physically there, kind of working backwards from the little guys to the big guy, were like those like wing-backed hussars, like converted to be riding like little bears or some sort of cool cavalry like that, for all of the Dracothian things. Mm-hmm. The Judicators look like kind of marksmen for sure, but they look like the kind of like tough Kislevite style markmen you might find out like in that wilderness, like in the old world lore.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
His Purple Sun was this converted like ice elemental thing being ridden by clearly like a Kislevite ice princess sort of mage, as if she was just like driving this thing into the heart of an army.
Nice.
And last but certainly not least, his Krondis was this huge, converted, massive polar bear.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And it's just gorgeous. It has the look of what Nightmare Fuel poured liberally onto a copy of the Golden Compass would produce.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, at some point when we add various layers to the site, we can get some pictures up there if Jeremy's willing to share them, because they're really beautiful. But it was really a pleasure to see this army. But I won't bear it.
But was it a pleasure to play against?
It was.
Excellent.
It was frustrating in some ways, to no fault of Jeremy's, because I really wanted to kill the bear, and twas not to be. So, basically, again, given top of one, and all this armies in the sky where they come down and shoot stuff, and I kind of had like one of those what I call flashing neon lights with the Slaves of Darkness army. I was playing moments, which generally will tell me not to push too hard that moment and maybe hold off for a second turn, because little buffs aren't going off or things aren't going quite right. And, one of the combos which was enabled in this particular list was having the prayer from the big war shrine say, yes, chosen, you can charge 3d6. And then getting off the spell from the Sorcerer Lord on the 3d6 cast, which gives them the +1 to hit and wound, so they end up at 2 ups rather than 3 ups 3 ups. That tends to make them a lot better against things that can roar them or whatnot.
Sure.
Well, no 3d6 charges. Got a 1, took a wound on the war shrine immediately.
Oh no!
And I guess he just rolled kind of low on the other spell, and it got actually dispelled. This doesn't happen very often with the Sorcerer Lord of 3 dice. So right there, not so great. But they kind of ran forward to get the power anyway. I felt like I had to get rid of this one block, including Dracothian, or some Dracothian, before all the other stuff came down and shot me to death. There were some potentially better things I could have done, which were less exciting and more cagey, but I did this. And he was sitting there with the 3 Praetors, and I managed to get like a crazy long bomb charge. I thought I probably wouldn't actually get that, but no, they're in there. So I went for it, and I managed to kill all the Praetors and wound Dracothian. But then he swung back and killed like 5 of them immediately. And that was probably the big thing, because that meant they get their second activation. It went from sure thing, we'll kill this giant dragon, to it's kind of a dicey, unlikely maybe. And it wasn't enough. I think he was left with like 6 or 7 wounds or something like that, maybe even more. And it just kind of sealed the deal, because at that point, because this army didn't have a lot of defensive output outside the Chosen, it could really just go and swat things down. He was able to bring the Fulminators in and erase the remaining Chosen. And even with a Bellicor shutting down the big bear, there was a truly oppressive amount of shooting that was able to deal with the rest of the stuff in the army that was trying to hold objectives and do things as it came down. Combined out a double turn, and things were not super sunny. And a lot of fun. Had a wonderful time with it. Got to see the Purple Sun roaming around doing its neat thing. But at the end of the day, this one was a definite Jeremy win. So, shook the man's hand and said, thank you for letting your giant bear eat my Bellicor. Actually, mine was your Bellicor, but yes.
It's our Bellicor.
It's joint ownership.
Bellicor together.
Exactly. The real Bellicor was the friends we made along the way.
It's a Wheelicor. But I digress. So that was a wonderful one, but it left me sitting pretty at what had been the perfectly balanced 1-1-1 of day one into now an unenviable 1-2-1. I guess that would be it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've lost track of how these numbers work, so we'll go with that.
Go with that. So final moment of the day. All great times so far, even with some mixed results for the Army's performance. I end up playing a guy I know pretty well, a friend of mine named Bob Pisano, who's also a member of Wicked Dicey.
Oh, nice. I remember Bob.
Yeah, Bob's great. Always a fun game, always an interesting time, always a good conversation. And, he's had a number of different armies over the years. We've had many a hard-fought battle on different tournament battlefields, including some memorable ones in the past. I think the final game of LBL where his pumpkin-themed Halloween flesh eaters ate my ogres, which was a fun one. Yeah, I recall well. But this time he was bringing Siege, and he had the Guild of Summoners. and he had really, kind of an interesting lists, because he had brought at least one sort of unusual thing in the form of 10 chosen, actually kind of be like this allied in like hammer that you were just going to have to deal with maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, that it was like Kairos, a Magister, the Overgrowth Thaumaturge. You had like a couple units of horrors. You had acolytes. You had some of the endless spells, but it was one of those like, well, if the engine gets going, bad things.
Yeah,
but
lots
he gave
of
me top of one. Yeah. So he gave me top of one, and I think full credit to him. Like we were getting ready for the game, and I think like we're talking about stuff their army could do, and I don't think like when I was mentioning the chosen running and charging fast, it had quite like been very, very clear that they might have a crazy threat range, because some of the stuff ended up coming together, and you give it top of one, and they managed to be flying chosen because they levitated them, and they ran up and they got their big charge, and they went just right over everything and immediately killed all the characters.
Man, you love to see it, though.
And as they say in Star Trek, this is the way. That's amazing.
Is that how they say it in Star Trek?
Just levitating chosen. This is the way, Picard.
It was. I mean, they had a good run, and it was just one of those things where the dice were not going in Bob's favor, and some of the key things had gone off in mine, and so they managed to kill all the characters, including Kairos, the double activation, as well as the screens that were around them. And I'd gotten the objectives to get points, and then on the bottom of one, I Bellicored the Chosen, which is a great target for Bellicored.
Sure.
So at this point, very little was going to happen, and we made some rolls, and the Chosen were going to move or do anything. And ipso facto, I sort of like very quickly lucked into a lock on that particular game. So we played that a little bit, and then ended up calling it after it was very clear where it had gotten to. But that was the final game of the tourney, and a fun one, but a relatively short one. And then we closed it out.
Sure. Sometimes you get that early swing, and there's just no recovering from it.
Yeah, it was definitely like the Chosen having their musical montage, in the way they should be in that particular.
Well, I'm glad that they got one in the end, right? Because it felt like they'd had some mixed success in terms of getting in there and doing the Chosen thing. So, I'm glad they ended on a high note.
They did. It was fun for them. Had to have their moment in the sun. But yeah, they'd done their work. But it was an interesting tournament, just sort of seeing how different situations can make that particular unit's task more challenging, especially if the backup isn't there for them. Because if they can be isolated, they can easily be kind of cut down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, great tournament.
That sounds great. Well, you know what we'll have to do, Jack, is we'll have to take all of that knowledge and experience and lists from that tournament and throw them all in the bin, because now there's a new GHB in town, and all of that stuff is now null and void.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? We had fought for these nuggets of strategic wisdom, tactical insight, what to do differently, as we path our way through
GW just kicks them to the curb.
Exactly. But I'm really excited about this new one, and maybe there was some foreshadowing in that game against Jeremy and all of these icy moments, because here we are in Andor, all of a sudden dealing with some sort of winter magic. It seems.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like
part of me has a little bit of concern after hearing more and more of the rabble rousers going rah, 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 rah. Just when talking about some of the rules coming out, but I cut you off there, Miles.
No, it's all good. I was gonna say I feel like the battle on the snow thing is like a classic Warhammer Fantasy Battles situation. Like I remember doing some sort of campaign where there was at least a week where we did a battle on the ice or something like that. So I'm excited to dig into these missions and give them a go. The rabble rousers might not be wrong, though. We'll find out.
Oh yeah, I do have some suspicions on that front. I guess maybe they kick it off. I mean, for one, I should give my microphone a rest that you guys talk more, because they're going on and on. I think that I just want to throw out that I think there are two broad themes in this book, at least what I've seen so far, which are really interesting. Mm-hmm. One, crazy ice magic, which crazy magic in general. Mm-hmm. And two, interesting new missions which punish people who have builds, like I guess, which are very strong in one direction. Because there seem to be missions to screw up that approach.
Yep, and the missions, I gotta say, are the things that make me the most excited about this GHP. All the extra stuff is really honestly making me think I just want to do a non-sorcerer army, because it just seems like let them roll and do all their fun stuff. I'm just gonna let them have their perfect plans fall apart when they engage with these missions.
No, I mean, like when in a world where we've been fighting like Croak and Kairos and some of these other super wizards, Techless, like I'm just used to them getting their spells off and me not getting my spells off. So how is this going to be any different?
Exactly.
It's probably true, but I don't know. The whole primal magic dice thing does kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in the works, because they're going to have a crazy add to dispel dice if they want to situation. So you could see a 3d6 dispel fairly often.
It looks cool though that some of the fine print on the primal dice, at least sort of so your main source of primal dice is the free ones you guys get to roll for, and if you get one, your opponent always gets one.
Yep, which is
I think it's really nice. And then there's the only other way to get them largely is through the core battalion of take 2 to 3 wizards. And then it's a 3-up, get an extra one. But like, I feel like in general, like I like the fact that if we're handing out these primal dice, we're giving them to both sides.
Yeah. And I mean, it hopefully does balance it out a little bit. I still do wonder how, armies like Fire Slayers are going to deal with this.
Sure.
I think they're going to have a factory producing those Obsidian icons over time.
Yeah.
I mean, it is going to be interesting though, because it comes down to matchup dependent, but like. Armies that generally are considered lower tier casting because they don't have options like some of the other heavy hitters do.
Sure.
Like Beasts of Chaos, who generally have really good spells, but a hard time casting them with no benefits to cast unless you get really lucky.
Sure. Some of those harder spells are gonna start showing up.
Yeah. So that's going to be an interesting, like, weird little sub meta thing that I'm going to be looking out for.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to think like Mind Razor, right? Mind Razor is notoriously difficult to cast if you don't have Marathi doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now we could be potentially seeing this just on a bunch of Footless, which I honestly love to see. Not that I'm sick of the Snake Ladies, but. Or that Marathi's lost her shine, to be honest. She's not as scary anymore with Croak and everybody else walking around the board.
Sure.
Or even just a giant unit of zombies, apparently. So, hopefully it'll breathe life into some things. I've given up on my hope for an all cavalry book, a GHB that really lives in cavalry only. We're never going to see it. I'm never going to have an all mounted loving GHB book. It's okay.
I mean, I'll never say never. There's a whole next edition, but
we'll wait till 4.0.
There we go.
I think I figured out, Matt, what they'll do for that edition too. It's genius. It's going to be the Plains of Akshi or something like that, and they're going to make you put 4 battle mats together.
Oh, nice. Just be
that would make
this
sense.
Enormous board.
It's tough to be on foot.
Yeah. I hope you like walking. I I was gonna say, Matt, we got to get you out here because in 2 weeks' time, my local store is running the Mount Me tournament of only mounted units are allowed.
Oh, that's right. I've heard tell of this.
It should be pretty silly. Now that does mean if you're doing the math that there are some whole armies that just cannot participate, and that's just the type of tournament that we're having. And you can go to the next one with your snake ladies or whatever.
That's so funny.
But it should be very silly, at least show up. And actually, one other one that was really funny, it's just not to make a huge tangent, that's happening up north is it's the salt mines or something like that, but it's Salt Fest. I can't remember the name, but basically every round the TO will roll a random dice on a table, and that will affect everyone's game. And it could be stuff like no heroic actions, no spells, no allegiance abilities, like for the round, right? So it's like, excuse me, what's going on?
That is going to wreak havoc with so many results.
Yeah. So it's
I love it.
A good time to just have some silly fun playing this game, and we'll get back to the serious competitive stuff once we've sunk our teeth into this new GHB.
Oh, you know what I'm going to say about that style of play? I think that's more competitive. Nobody can rely on their super fancy, well ironed list. I think that's more competitive.
It's certainly more tactical and less strategic, right?
Indeed.
Well, yeah, I mean, that stone in the road, you actually figure out how to go around it, but just have the whole thing collapse your plan. That's a lot of fun.
I mean, Sun Tzu, everybody's got a plan until they get kicked in the nethers, right?
Yeah, right. I think
100%.
Sun Tzu specifically wrote about people's nethers. I think that was the thing I remember him writing about extensively.
Yeah. Did you know he was a guest star in Battlestar Galactica, the remake?
Is that right? They had Sun Tzu.
That was a resurrection you've been waiting for.
I'm just rolling with it today.
There we go.
If I'm just gonna start adding all the different mishmashes together.
Always strikes late, coming at you with the pop culture sci-fi references.
That's right. The entirely accurate pop culture sci-fi and historical references. Yeah. And the only reason I want to really mix it up here is because it's definitely in the feeling of these new missions on this GHB.
Mm-hmm. Nice, bringing it back.
Very true. Yeah.
So I think I'm fairly accurate. If you were to take the words that I say and then read the missions from a competitive player's point of view, it will sound exactly as correct as a competitive mission as I sound stating fact of science fiction and history together, which I freaking love. These new missions are going to be such a pain.
Absolutely.
Such a pain.
Well, let's just think about that for a second. Maybe pick an example, because I love it too, but I mean, there's so many here, but I'm just thinking about the times you could show up with your army that does the thing, and maybe exactly what you were just talking about, Matt, where your army does this almost every game, turn 1 or 2 against someone else that relies on certain mechanics. It won't work for you. Like, what about the frigid Zephyr? If you are a shooting army and all of a sudden there's a ferocious squall, which means you cannot see things which are not within 12 inches of you, and you're really heavily invested in shooting, that could be bad.
Yeah.
Now to counter that, I can't remember if Lumineth still have the line of sight blockage for Sentinels.
No, they don't. They have to look. They have to look at stuff like everybody else now.
Oh, sweet sassafras.
Plebeian elves, yeah. Now any KO player worth his salt will just move the boat up, but
12 inches, no problem.
They can't fly, but they can still sort of scooch along the ground, no problem.
How fast is the boat if it can't fly? Because that's actually pretty crazy.
It's still just as fast. Like
it's like 18 inches, right?
The boats they're more like 12, but like you can get them you can make them faster. There's plenty of ways to make the boats faster and run and shoot and that kind of stuff. I actually have not dived as hard as I could into the new KO book. I need to rescue my stranded Skyfleet from the bowels of Massachusetts.
Yeah, I do hear that Team Ireland needs a little bit of a work on the KO there. So
yep.
You should come in furiously and show them how to do it.
There we go.
For those who don't know, Miles used to play KO almost exclusively in the Pacific Northwest scene, and it was always a good game, but it was never a game I walked away from thinking I was going to win.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, the sheer number of times I had to explain the entire army to somebody before the game began.
That used to be its greatest strength. I think there was at least one Las Vegas tournament where we were relying on that confusion to basically be the
right. Yeah, it's like, look, I will be open and accepting and very transparent about what my rules are. If you can't remember them all fast enough, like that's on you at this point. I don't know what to tell you.
Is that our trick? Because that used to be the whole reason I did well with Dragon Ogres. Are you in the movement phase or are you in the hero phase?
Yeah. Like, look.
Oh my God.
This is part of the game. You were supposed to do your homework. I will never lie to you, and I'll be very upfront about what my rules are.
I mean, at least it was always a delightful army to see in the field. I mean, like for those who haven't encountered this particular force until it gets resurrected from certain boxes. They're all Steve Zissou themed, little red hats. Yeah. So it's like the life aeronautic.
Oh yeah,
very fun.
Yeah, it's insanely, awesomely sculpted little red beanies. So
I
great.
just got the technique down. It's like, so I can do fur, I can do flames, and I can do little red beanies. If you want anything else sculpted, you need to get somebody else.
Like this. It's a limited repertoire, but sometimes specialization is key. I think that's
exactly.
You will have to have at least one cruel boy with a beanie on.
With a beanie.
Because, you're going into the frozen tundra here, and you gotta have, with all your cruel boys, you gotta have one cool boy, right?
Exactly. So, one cool boy. I like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That should be like the Where's Waldo across all of your armies.
Yeah.
I'm with you guys, though. These missions are very spicy, and I'm excited. I was saying to Matt before the show that one of them, this limited resources, reminds me of a narrative mission I had made up years ago. It's the one where there's lots of objectives, but you can only score them a limited number of times.
Oh, the siphon meltwater one?
Yeah, exactly. And so... which I thought was really cool, and they did it. Obviously, they did it differently than I had done it, but it looks very fun. It does seem like there's going to be a whole new ecosystem of little counters that we're going to have to develop for this GHP to be able to track everything. But
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of all for it. Maybe it'll slow down the. I don't know about you guys, but this last GHP became very repetitive, and not in the way that the previous ones were, but like, oh, you've got the hero does the thing. Okay, we're using kind of the same style missions that we had before since 2.0. There's like minor changes here and there, but this is like,
this is a whole new.
This is like Resorb or something. This is like going back to like the older wacky missions where you were relying just as much on chance and positioning early on in the game to make sure that if something random happened, you had something, in your back pocket. Sorry, I cut you off there, but these missions make me so excited to actually play.
They're going to be really cool. I mean, if I am being critical, I think they're all a little bit on the complicated side in terms of like health of the game and new players and stuff. And having said that, though, I'm very, very excited to play them.
That's very fair. I'm curious which one is going to get maligned most quickly as being like the new twists and turns or whatever.
I think it's Towers in the Tundra.
Towers in the Tundra.
Yeah, which is the one. There's 2 objectives, but there's also 2 wizard towers.
Yeah, I think that one probably Spring the Trap. But there are going to be, there are ones that like the majority of TOs aren't going to pick, and it's going to make me sad. And I expect those, right? But I feel like there are going to be ones that are going to be like creepers, right? Like the ice fields is going to be one of them that
I can already tell
really
people are going to hate
play.
That. Yeah,
like it's
going
to show
everyone
up.
Takes mortal wounds all the time.
It's going to show up, but a lot of people are not really going to want to play it. And then there's going to be like the gamers that really excel on this. Like I can see a Squig army going insane with this, just having extra mortal wounds applied to them. Hey, I'm going to run and force a test, and I'm not even going to get in combat. There's going to be a lot of really interesting situations that come up in games. From that
and any army that's got access to like a 5-up ward, like Nurgle or Khorne, if they're far enough away, they're not going to care about D3 mortal wounds. Like it'll be fine. If that's all you got, like you're gonna have to try harder.
Yeah. There's some funny tricks. But even just that's such a good example though of just something which certain type of army not gonna like. If you have to run your fast army because you'll run in charge abilities across the whole thing to get where you need to go quickly, you're gonna take a lot of wounds to do it, inclusive of the charges, right? 36 chargers taking D3 mortals on any one in the modifier. And the show off.
That's a good point.
And
the other thing that I think is great about this GHB, looking at the battle tactics and the grand strats, the grand strategies, all of these suck, and I love
it. Oh man,
no clear winner.
Looking at those was kind of painful. It was just like, oh god.
Yeah.
There's definitely going to be a lot of Heidi wizards, though. I think isn't one of them just keep a wizard alive?
Keep your general, who is Andatorian Locus.
Certainly.
So you've already sunk your command trait into this little wizard, and you've got to keep it alive, and it's got the largest target on its back.
Not exactly the throwaway character. Yeah, you're right about that. Okay, so fair enough. I don't know. I feel like that was a nice shake up there across the battle tactics and the grand strats for sure. Some of the battle tactics seemed a little more achievable than the last GHB set. Like you could almost guarantee a few of them to build a certain way, but
and then there are others that just completely cut out armies with sorcerers. I feel like this one deals a pretty big death blow to some armies as far as like competing on that level from these tactics alone.
I feel like so in the last GHB, we'd done a little bit of analysis on the last GHB and found that there were most armies could do comfortably 4 of the GHB tactics, and it wasn't always the same ones. But we thought that on average, most armies could do 4 of them pretty soundly, pretty easily, right? Like eye for an eye, cunning maneuver, desecrate their land. You should be able to do those. So this one, intimidate the invaders. That seems pretty straightforward. Get models outside of your territory. Map dependent, clearly.
I mean, it's a turn 1 if you go first, easy.
If it's the turn 1 if you go first and your territory ends 0 inches away, you know what I mean?
That's true. If it's 9 inches away and you're a slow army, you have a lot of different support pieces. It wouldn't work, but it does have potential for that.
But also an easy one potentially late in the game, as things have moved around, so that's kind of interesting. I could see a lot of armies doing the magical dominance where you just have one wizard cast one spell and then call it a day.
Yeah, and do it from outside of unbind range. To avoid those shenanigans. Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of little, I know I've been looking at Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and they have an artifact or a command trait or something that lets if you cast a spell, the first spell you cast with this wizard cannot be unbound. you know, or like I'm thinking, what's that Sylvaneth spell? They've got a 3d6 cannot be unbound or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it all comes together, but I feel like there's a lot of those little tricks. Bait and trap, which is retreat 2 units, charge 2 units. A little bit hard to coordinate, you know, sort of much like, gaining momentum could be a little bit hard to coordinate mid game, but I think a lot of armies have play into that one.
Did you like that battle tactic? I don't know what they call it. Beast of Chaos 2-point charity raffle, or I'm sorry, that's surround and destroy.
Oh yeah. That was good. Except that you have to pick the units that are already on the battlefield. So the Beast of Chaos units would have to come in, sit there 2 whole turns to then score that one.
That is fair. I totally misread that. I thought they could just pick it and say, "Yeah, whatever I want to be."
With the amount of Ungor Raiders that people are trying to leave,
that's true too.
I mean, it's not that hard, to be honest. There's
the Led into the Maelstrom is rough, ones. But I feel like I've seen a lot of these where it's like you have to charge a thing in and purposely not kill the enemy unit.
That's a lot of uncertainty to leave in the battle tactic realm, I think.
Right?
Yeah, very much the case.
Yeah, Magical Mayhem is another one of those, right? So just the amount of rules lawyering crap that is going to happen with that. But the battle the destroyed unit was by this spell that gave me +1 to hit or something.
Yeah,
and I can definitely see an FAQ coming out for that,
just to make sure that. But that's a Zinch auto pick, right? That's a Lumineth maybe auto pick. Who else? Probably Seraphon.
I think it actually might be way more achievable than even the typical magic heavy Gatling cannon armies because of some of the stuff in the GHB. I mean, we haven't really talked about the spells yet, but I come up with this. I was just going to say I came up with this term that I want to popularize called the Magikazi because I think the Magikazi is coming.
Nice,
and that's going to be little wizards or medium wizards getting places they shouldn't be quickly with like a teleport of some sort or like the boatman, and then unleashing
the Merciless Blizzard.
Either with some high cast ability, an auto cast, which can't be unbound, or just, the primal magic dice or some other ability. It makes it pretty likely because that is a crazy ability.
Sure. 46 mortal wounds.
Like 46. Yeah. Doesn't matter if they die.
I mean, the scenario you just described, depending on how it all comes together, like that is a sketchy battle tactic to pick up, because like, the moments where you could fail, but also as like a general like strategy that you're going to try, that seems wild, right? It feels like everybody's got a who am I thinking of with the mask that he lists up? I don't know if he listed up or not. The orc guy, Wargog Prophet.
Wargog.
Everyone's got a Wargog Prophet now.
Yeah,
something like that.
Oh, I was thinking about something like the Changeling, which you can just drop right next to somebody turn 1, right?
Oh, but he's the
Lore Master.
So he's not. Oh, I guess you don't have to.
It's just heroes,
only Andatorian locusts and Antorian locusts.
Antorian locusts.
Well, it looks like the Lore Master then.
Lore Master could do it.
Yeah.
What an asshole that guy is.
God, I had Jack Ballard tank my entire Sylvaneth army with just one of those. God.
They're so annoying.
And more so when he does that, just shows up and goes nuclear and something from 9 years away.
And he's like he's like a +1 caster, right? Because when he's not near anybody, or I feel like I don't know.
Gets his primal dice, goes off in 3d6. Oh man.
We do have to talk about the one that kind of I deflated a little bit when I read it, only because of one single keyword in there, the expropriation. And that's pick one enemy unit that's controlling or bonded to an endless spell or an incarnate.
Oh, and
we know how I feel about incarnates. They at least the one that we've had so far just entirely breaks the game whenever it's on the table, to the point where it's a crutch, to be honest. And yep, that's an opinion, but whatever. But the fact that it's there and people have already like built up these crutch tactics to make an incarnate wild or do something. Man, I am not happy that is an actual.
I think it's going to be great
battle tactic. Ugh.
Oh yeah,
but it's all. Also, like, when you make an incarnate wild, it's very important.
Oh, lost you guys for a sec there.
Yeah,
it's very important that when the incarnate goes wild, it's exactly where you.
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Miles is.
Where you want it.
Miles is on incarnate Ireland time. See, he's talking about talking about the incarnate so much that it just knocked him from the actual conversation.
Hello. I'm back.
The incarnate came in and was like, "Look, you know what? We can't talk about me too much." That's what the incarnate did.
Yeah, I think the fair folk were messing with your undersea cable.
But I guess my point is like, right? If you're bringing an incarnate to then have it do shenanigans, it is pivotally, mission critical that it does not go wild before you are ready for it to go wild.
Yeah,
that's true.
Right, and now there is a point and click way to make an incarnate go wild.
Which is good. It's such a situational spell, though, right? Like, we need to release more incarnates, and it's going to be more of a thing, Well,
God,
of course, predict that 2 months.
Oh, they totally are. They will be. If they're a keyword, then we know we're getting another incarnate, and it's going to be dumb.
Matt, I'm going to make a
Ice
prediction,
NATO,
which you're going to hate. There's 2 ways this could go, right? We know there's going to be an Ice NATO. Or something like that, or like a cool big snowflake that floats around like a frost.
I love that. That would
be awesome.
But what if they go full on forbidden power with this? What if they just tested the waters with one from Gura and they just actually release a box of like 7 you can just choose from, which are forever in the game now, in like the end of the summer?
Oh God!
Oh my God! We just add it to this list of. The subtle thing in this GHB is honestly all the different changes to the endless spells. I feel like that doesn't get enough press time.
I have not even processed that yet, to be honest. What are the big ones?
So let's see.
I know you can't surfboard thank all around anymore, which is nice. I think that was kind of a boring.
It's a wizard with 9 wounds or less on launch on the Soul Seeker. Actually, the biggest, most exciting news to come out of this GHB, I'm calling it right now. Shards of Valagar have an actual use case.
Miles, are you reading my mind from across the ocean? Because I was also thinking that when I read it. I'm like, I painted these up. Day in the sun, guys. These gems are getting some light.
We've been, all 3 of us have collectively been wanting these things to work for so long. So he's building it up here, and I'm excited. I'm not going to read the rules. I'm going to have him explain it.
Sounds good. So casting range of 18, and you set the 2 ends up wholly within 8 of each other. And then again, you leapfrog the one part like the old version. So 1 half moves, and then you set it up within 8 each of the other part. But the new ability is while they're within 6 inches of any endless spells of this ability. So this one, then units cannot fly or be removed from the battlefield with an effect that would allow them to be set up again in the same turn. Mm-hmm. In addition, you can't set up units within 6 inches of the endless spell. So it is a pretty sizable bubble of no deep striking.
And no holes and no grave sites and no nothing.
Yeah.
That's pretty gnarly.
So
and
it
no
shuts down.
Yeah.
It shuts down so much bullshit. Yeah, I think these are going to be very popular.
Yeah,
and lucky for me, I already bought the internet out of them, and so I will be selling them at an exorbitant markup.
Exactly.
I do have doubles on some of these too, so I might as well.
Yeah, I think that's got to be fun. But yeah, there's some other little tweaks which are neat. Like, I don't think anyone's seen the whatchamacallit, the Aether Void pendulum kicking around, but now it's better. It does, I think, D6 moves now and things it rolls over.
Nice. And I think, am I right in reading this? It can swing both ways?
Oh, the Aether Void pendulum?
Yeah, it can swing both ways, like an actual pendulum.
Oh, does it go back and forth now instead of just
it can go
one way?
Either forward or back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little more thematic.
Geminids are wild. It's 2 up, cannot issue or receive commands.
Yeah, that's strong.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And let's see. Yeah, they're looking pretty good. Maelstrom is still although it's interesting to see how that they're never going to make. It's like some of these, they're just like, we don't know what to do with this, you know?
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. Like, I'll take the cheapest suffocating gravetide ever. Like, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Just because it's big.
Yeah, it's just
that's its own use, really.
Yeah, big blocky thing.
But Prismatic Palisade is disgusting now. I love this.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Do you have a problem with shooting? Done.
Yeah. So 18-inch range cast. You set it up, and then when you put it down, and then every subsequent hero phase, for everything within 6 inches on a 3-up, for roll for each unit, they can't shoot.
When you add 3 inches to the range of that at each battle round.
Yeah, so the longer it's been on the field, the bigger that range gets. Although you might end up wanting to dispel it yourself and recast it, that kind of thing, depending on what's going on. But like those like early, sort of shooting bombs from what am I thinking of? The crossbow dudes, Cruel Boys to a certain extent, Lumineth. Although you're not going to get this off. There's like a 0% chance of you casting the spell against Teclis.
See, this is where I was going to say, this is like, I know KO have access to other things that are going to be just as cool, but
yeah,
man, would this be an awesome thing to drop in the middle of the board? If you got a turn 1 with KO to just be like, pop, okay, you can't dispel this sucker. And so there goes your first turn shooting.
Sure.
That would be a really good spell for them.
Yeah, the one thing KO hate more than fighting armies, it's shooting armies.
Mm-hmm.
And magic armies. And other shooting armies. And other KO. Damn those
anything KO. That can scratch the paint on the boat. Those are on the list of grudges.
Yeah, their Book of Grudges is just essentially everything at this point, right?
But tiered. It's everything tiered.
Yeah.
I will say that the thing about the Prismatic Palisade that I like a lot is that they've made endless spells before where they're great in theory, but the mechanics are broken, so they're too easy to dispel before they can do their intended thing. Like, I think Soldier Snackles was like that a little while ago, not most recently, but before that. But this particular Palisade, you drop it down, takes care of that stand and shoot against something nasty you want to charge, maybe 2/3 of the time. You know it ahead of time. And then because it procs at the beginning of the hero phase, if they didn't dispel initially, yeah, they can take it off the board afterwards, but it's already done its work. It's already affected all the stuff nearby.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, I do, and I'm always just so light on my endless spells, but they all feel like they've kind of found their stride now, which is nice.
I like that. Yeah. I definitely, reflecting back, I definitely prefer a meta that includes a lot of varied endless spell use to one that doesn't. I think they're a really fun part of the game.
Totally agreed on that. We never touched on, as we've been kind of jumping around in this book, just the original spell they previewed, Hoarfrost.
Oh, sure, where it's the D3 and you can change the statistic to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I think this one is crazy. And like, I'm so excited to see it used. Those the creative ways people like make murder machines out of various units with it. Because I can certainly see it like being good no matter what you roll. As long as you set it up right.
No, I think it's going to be fun, and it's a fun one that it encourages your creativity to how to use it.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
Well, I know we've been kind of waxing poetic about the GHB and probably go on and on about it. But what do you guys think? I mean, have we gotten to that witching hour for all of our listeners?
I think so. You know, it's keep it here on the midnight train or whatever. I had something for this. I don't know, you know.
The witching hour?
Yeah, thanks for joining us at Always Strikes Late. And
thanks for joining us. It Always Strikes Late. Keep it cool out there, guys.
Yeah.
Don't strike first, strike last.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we'll leave you all to the sultry tunes of
Kenny G. Yeah.
Kenny Gore.
Woo doo 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 doo.
The best Gore.
What's that smooth jazz coming out of the forest? No, don't go in there. It's a trap.
Up.
You got it. I think you got it.